Alright, good morning everyone. I'm not sure if things are playing up or not, but we'll keep an eye on that. We are here with break 469, part 1, and that is another 26 League Heroes retail combo break featuring the 26 League Heroes case, which we're going to get done first, and as well as the 26 League Heroes starter case. With the bonuses, 26 League Heroes hobby box and the 26 sticker album and box combo, with the bonuses being randomised at the end of the break between all 17 teams. That team list for today: Broncos, Shane Murtagh; Raiders, Warren Stoddart; Bulldogs, Andrew Ryan; Sharks, Johnathon Bowden; Dolphins, Scott McBryde; Titans, Warren Stoddart; Manly, Nathan Russell; Storm, Lachlan Allen; Knights, Scott Longworth; Cowboys, Scott McBryde; Eels, Craig Hyde; Panthers, Scott Longworth; Rabbitohs, George Grisbos; Dragons, George Grisbos; Roosters, Scott McBryde; Warriors, George Grisbos; Tigers, Warren Stoddart. And here we are. We have, I don't know why I'm tucking myself in, I've got to get up anyway. We have our bonuses, hobby box and sticker box, as well as our sticker album. Let's chuck them straight up the back, out of our way. We will grab them again at the end of the starter case. So if you didn't know, this is actually our last 26 League Heroes break, case break. With no stock being available. We do have a 21 Traders case break listed. It does have a 26 League Heroes blaster box as a bonus that'll get randomized at the end of the break. It is a random team. Alright. Let's go. Box number 1. Let's bring the YouTube chat up. League heads, KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous, Moses Leota for Panthers. Die cuts, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Bang, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous, Mackenzie Wheel for the Cowboys. League heads, Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Luca Moretti for the Eels. Luminous, Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Gladiators, Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Number 331. Luminous, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers, Alex 12 for the Tigers. Luminous, Tamale for the Raiders. League Heads, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Luminous, Philip Semi for Titans. Red Triumph, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Die cut, Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Luminous, Emma Veron for the Sharks. I am surprised that the Luminous albums aren't more popular. More so that there's only supposed to be 3,000 produced across NRL and AFL. League Heads, Moses Sulai for the Dragons. So that's 3,000 in total, not 3,000 in each. Just, yeah. Samula Fainu for the Tigers. And they're still available on their website. I know we have some as well. Game Breakers, Trent Leroux for Storm. Luminous, Ray Stone for the Dolphins. It's a bit choppers there, sorry.
She lost the part in the game.
Pardon?
She lost the part in the game.
Oh. Oh. Bang, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Luminous, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Bang, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Mercury, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights, number 162. Luminous, Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Game Breakers, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Luminous, Trent Leroux for Storm. League heads, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous, Jamal Fogarty for Manly. Game breakers, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Murtagh Nakor for the Warriors. Game breakers, Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. Luminous, Dane Gagai for the Knights. League heads, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Luminous, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Game breakers, Kale Iro for the Sharks. Luminous, Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Oh, bang, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Dylan Walker for the Eels. Game breakers, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous, Zahara Tamara. League heads, Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Luminous, Brian To'o for Panthers. Die cuts, Tony Staggs for the Broncos. Luminous, Luke Lilly for Tigers. League heads, Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Luminous, Murray Talagi for the Cowboys. Game breakers, Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous, Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Alfiana Campi Era for Titans. Luminous, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. League heads, Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Luminous, Tuikami Kamika for Storm. Yep, give me 2 seconds. Premiership predictor, Luminous for Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Give me a second, guys. I've just got to disappear under the table. Leg caught in cables. toaster tripped the power not long before I went live when I was trying to cook toast. Because, you know, that's what you do with a toaster. But yeah, the NAS didn't kick back on. Leg heads, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Sean Kepe for the Rabbitohs. It's rebooting now.
Well, I think
Red Triumph for the Eels. Luminous, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Leg heads, Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Luminous, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Die cut, Griffin Neem for the Cowboys. Luminous, Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Bang, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous, Fa'alago for Storm. League heads, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Brendan Smith for the Rabbitohs. And that's the end of box number 1. Alright, let's go. Box number 2. We are a bit behind this morning. Bang, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous, Jamin Salmon for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers, Tanila Paseka for Manly. Luminous, Cameron Munster for Storm. Red Triumph for the Dragons. Luminous, Brian Kelly for the Titans. League heads, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous, Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Game Breakers, Valami kick out for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Jordan Ricky for the Broncos. Gladiators, John Bateman for the Cowboys, number 376. Luminous Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. League Heads, Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Game Breakers, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Luminous, Harry Grant for the Storm. Bang, Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Luminous, Renato Mortalo for the Sharks. Die Cuts, Alex Twile for the Tigers. Luminous, Jesse Southwell for the Knights. League Heads, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous, Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Liam Martin for the Panthers. Luminous, Tony Staggs for the Broncos. League Heads, Fa'alago for Storm. Luminous, Ali Latua for the Warriors. Die Cuts, Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous, Connolly Lumi Lou for the Dolphins. League Heads, Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. Luminous, Samuel Stone Street for the Sharks. Red Triumph, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous, Tanila Paseka for Manly. Game Breakers, Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Luminous, Sam Walker for the Roosters. League Heads, Samula Fainu for the Tigers. Luminous, John Bateman for the Cowboys. League Heads, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous, Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Jake Trbojevic, die cut for Manly. Luminous, Zach Labour for the Cowboys. Fa'alago for Storm. Luminous Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Game Breakers Bo Fermor for the Titans. Luminous Luke Brooks for Manly. Die Cuts Sam Walker for the Roosters. Luminous Asai Katoa for Dolphins. League Heads Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Game Breakers Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous Georgia Hale for the Titans. League Heads Mitch Kenny for Panthers. Luminous Josh Kerr for the Dragons. Bang Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous Ruben Garrick for Manly. Game Breakers Joash for the Eels. Luminous Mitch Kenny for Panthers. League Heads Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous and Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Mercury Huli Kefu for the Dolphins, number 431. Luminous Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. League Heads Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Bang Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous Jalen DeGroot for Titans. Bang Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Luminous Isaiah Papali'i for Panthers. League Heads Big Tino for the Titans. Luminous Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Luminous Alex Seafarth for the Tigers. Die Cuts KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. And that is a box 2 done and dusted. Game breakers, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Nelson Sofa Solomona for Storm. Bang, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Moses Leota for Panthers. Luminous, Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Die cuts, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous, Episode Coruscant for the Tigers. Game breakers, Tamika Upton for the Broncos. Luminous, Liam Martin for Panthers. Mercury, Jamal Fogarty for Manly, number 412. Luminous, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. League heads, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous, Luca Moretti for the Eels. Game breakers, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. Bang, Casey McLean for Panthers. Luminous, Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Bang, Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous, Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. League heads, Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous, Jason Saab for Manly. Get out. Game breakers, Episode Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous, Jacob Preston for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous, Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. League heads, Harry Grant for Storm. Luminous, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Game breakers, Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Bang, Zach Labert for the Cowboys. Luminous, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. League Heads, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous, Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Die Cuts, Sam Verrills for the Titans. Luminous, Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. League Heads, Chanel Harris-Tavita for the Warriors. Luminous, Val Holmes for the Dragons. Die Cuts, Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Luminous, Big Tino for the Titans. Game Breakers, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous, Kale Iro for the Sharks. League Heads, Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Bang, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous, Keezy Apps for the Tigers. Gladiators, Asaya Papali'i for the Panthers, number 286. Luminous, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. League Heads, Asai Katoa for the Dolphins. It's the best card you got so far. I don't think, haven't we hit any ink? No, I think we've hit at least one of each. Like we've hit the Golden Treasures, we've hit the Black Triumph SIGs. But personally, I like going back to the Golden Tickets and the one-of-ones. Yeah, I miss them. Brighton Nickera for the Sharks. Game Breakers, Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Luminous, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Bang, Apisai Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous, Lycan King Togia for the Dragons. League Heads, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous, Isaac Tago for Panthers. I love pulling any version of the Triumphs in the Walsh. I still think that's one of the best pictures on the card. Obviously, no way Look, here we go. How's that? Obviously prefer the black triumphs and the signatures, but it's just got to be one of the best pictures, I believe, on a card at the moment that I know of anyway. Yeah. League heads, Greg Marju for the Knights. Luminous Addo Carr for the Eels. Game Breakers, KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous Robert Toya for the Roosters. League heads, Joash for the Eels. Luminous Samaima Torfa for the Raiders. Jack Whiten die cuts for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Tamir Martin for the Warriors. League heads, Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Red Triumph for the Tigers. Luminous Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Die cuts, Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Luminous Gahamat Shabaski for the Broncos. Die cut, Riley Smith for the Eels. Luminous Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Game Breakers, Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Luminous Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. League heads, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous Philip Sammy for the Titans. Bang Asaya Yongi for the Eels. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. League heads, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. Die cuts Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Luminous Connor Watson for the Roosters. Bang Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Game Breakers Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Dylan Walker for the Eels. League Heads Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous Zahara Tamara for the Raiders. League Heads Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous Tuikami Kamika for Storm. League Heads Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous Max Plath for the Dolphins. Mercury Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Number 200. Luminous Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Red Triumph Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Gladiators Jareem Bula for the Tigers. 161. Luminous Fa'alago for Storm. League Heads Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous Brendan Smith for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers Samaima Torfa for the Raiders. Luminous Tamale for the Raiders. League Heads Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Emma Veron for the Sharks. Game Breakers Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Luminous Samola Fainu for the Tigers. Triumph Cameron Munster for the Storm. Luminous Jake Jabovich for Manly. League heads, Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Luminous, Sean Kepe for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers, Olivia Higgins for the Knights. Luminous, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Die cut, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous, Nafor White for the Roosters. League heads, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Bang, Xavier Coates for the Storm. Luminous, Lindsay Smith for the Panthers. Game breakers, Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Luminous, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. League heads, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous, Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Bang, Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Die cuts, Philip Semi for the Titans. Luminous, Zali Hopkins for the Dragons. League heads, Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. Luminous, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Billy Smith for the Roosters. Luminous, Jermaine McEwen for Knights. Bang, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Game breakers, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous, Brian To'o for Panthers. Die cut, Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Luminous, Luke Lolili for Tigers. League heads, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Murray Talagi for Cowboys. Game breakers, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Last packet for the box. Bang, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Luminous, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. 4 boxes in and only 1 on the table. At least it's a strong finish. Gladiators, Jerome Hughes for Storm, number 153. Luminous, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Game breakers, Isaiah Katoa for the Dolphins. Luminous, Latu Fainu for the Tigers. League heads, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Luminous, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Game breakers, Appy Nichols for the Warriors. Luminous, Tom Dearden for the Cowboys. Bang, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous, Giant Arrow for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Game breakers, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous, Cassie Hiku for the Eels. Bang, Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Luminous, Marky Mark for the Roosters. League heads, Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous, Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. League heads, Payne Haas for the Broncos. Luminous, Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Die cuts, Roger Tulvasa Sheck for the Warriors. Luminous, Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Game breakers, Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Luminous, Angelina for the Bulldogs. Red Triumph, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Mercury, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Number 345. Nathan Cleary, Luminous for Panthers. League heads, James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. Luminous, Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers, Reece Walsh for the Broncos. Luminous, Billy Walters for the Broncos. League heads, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Luminous, Murtagh Nakor for the Warriors. Bang Lekahalasima for the Warriors. Luminous, Moses Leota for Panthers. League heads, Ethan Blumore for Manly. Luminous, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. James Schiller for the Knights. Luminous, Mackenzie Wheel for the Cowboys. Bang, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Luminous, Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. League heads, Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Greg Marshew, Luminous for the Knights. Game breakers, Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous, Kulikefu for the Dolphins. Die cuts, Charlie Staines for the Tigers. Luminous, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. League heads, Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Luminous, Appy Nichols for the Warriors. Game breakers, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Carl Lawton for the Cowboys. Daily M Predictor. Finally, another one for the table. Vanilla Pole for the Tigers. Game Breakers. Dylan Egan for the Dragons. Luminous. Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Red Triumph for the Dolphins. Luminous Dylan Lucas for the Knights. League Heads Xavier Coates for the Storm. Luminous Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Bang Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. League Heads Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Bang Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Luminous Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Game Breakers Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Luminous Trent LaRoe for Storm. League Heads Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Luminous Jamal Fogarty for Manly. Die Cuts Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Luminous AJ Brimson for the Titans. Alright, box number 6. Bang Marky Mark for the Roosters. Luminous Tamika Upton for the Broncos. Game Breakers Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. Die Cut Brian Totter for Panthers. Luminous Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. League Heads Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous Ben Trebojevic for Manly. Game Breakers, Cameron Munster for the Storm. Luminous, Sanua Taruva for the Tigers. League Heads, Jack Williams for the Eels. Luminous, Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Bang, Jareem Bula for the Tigers. Luminous, Alex Seafarth for the Tigers. League Heads, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous, Will Penasini for the Eels. Game Breakers, Payne Huss for the Broncos. Luminous, Jonah Pezzett for the Storm. Bang, Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous, Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. League Heads, Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Red Triumph, Hamali Olaka'atu for Manly. Luminous, Saratoga Tuki for Tigers. Game Breakers, Emily Bass for the Tigers. Luminous, Connolly Lumi Lou for Dolphins. League Heads, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Luminous, Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. League Heads, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous, Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. Die Cuts, Reece Walsh for the Broncos. Luminous, Ali Latua for the Warriors. Game Breakers, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous, Jordan Ricky for the Broncos. League Heads, Jareem Bula for the Tigers. Luminous, Tom Starling for the Raiders. Red Triumph, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous, Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. Die Cuts, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous, Tanila Paseka for Manly. Bang, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous Sam Walker for the Roosters. League Heads Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Luminous John Bateman for the Cowboys. Game Breakers Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous Jamin Salmon for the Bulldogs. League Heads Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Luminous Cameron Munster for Storm. Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Luminous Brian Kelly for the Titans. Game Breakers Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Bailey Simonson for the Eels. League Heads Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Bang Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous Harry Grant for Storm. League Heads Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Luminous Renato Molitalo for the Sharks. Instant win. Lost my team list. There we are. Luminous Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Bang Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous Jesse Southwell for the Knights. League Heads John Bateman for the Cowboys. Luminous Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Mercury Wade Egan for the Warriors. Number 290. Luminous Katoni Staggs for the Broncos. Game Breakers Kurt Catewell for the Warriors. Luminous Asaya Papali'i for the Panthers. Game Breakers James Fisher Harris for the Warriors. Luminous Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Gladiators, Alex Seafarth for the Tigers, number 170. Luminous Blaze Talagi for Panthers. And that's box number 6 done and dusted. 6 to go. Bang, Cody Nikorima for the Dolphins. Luminous Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. League heads, Molly Olika Atu for Manly. Luminous Luca Moretti for the Eels. Game breakers, Zach Labert for the Cowboys. Luminous Jason Saab for Manly. League heads, Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Luminous Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Bang, Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Luminous Gehamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. League heads, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Jacob Preston for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Ali Latua for the Warriors. Luminous James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. League heads, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Game breakers, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous Val Holmes for the Dragons. Die cuts, Sean Russell for the Eels. Luminous Big Tino for the Titans. League heads, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous Kale Iro for the Sharks. Mercury, Ethan Sanders for the Raiders, number 447. Luminous Cody Nikorima for the Dolphins. Die cuts Nafor White for the Roosters. Luminous Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Game Breakers Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous Keezy Apps for the Tigers. Gladiators Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors, number 152. Luminous Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. League Heads Apasai Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous Brighton Nakora for the Sharks. League Heads Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Jerome Hughes for Storm. Bang Jalen De Groot for Titans. Luminous Casey McLean for Panthers. Die cuts Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Game Breakers Anessa Biddle for the Sharks. Luminous Lycan King Togia for the Dragons. Bang Isaac Tago for Panthers. Luminous Isaac Tago for Panthers. League Heads Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous Alefiana Campi Era for Titans. Die cuts Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Luminous Addo Carr for the Eels. League Heads Brian Kelly for the Titans. Luminous Robert Toya for the Roosters. Game Breakers Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Game Breakers Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Luminous Samaima Torfa for the Raiders. Alex Seafarth for the Tigers. Luminous Dominic Young for the Knights. League Heads Junior Paulo for the Eels. Luminous Hamoli Olika R2 for Manly. Red Triumph for the Raiders. Luminous Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Game Breakers Tolato Koala for Manly. Luminous Mawaki Fodawaika for Titans. Excuse me. League Heads Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Luminous Ali Brigginshaw for the Broncos. Bang Murray Talagi for the Cowboys. Luminous Tamir Martin for the Warriors. Kalen Ponga for the Knights in the Triumph. Luminous Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. League Heads Liam Martin for Panthers. Luminous Reed Marnie for the Cowboys. Bang Tyron Wishart for the Storm. Luminous Damien Cook for the Dragons. Game Breakers Tui Kamika for Storm. Luminous Adam Dewey for Tigers. League Heads Apisai Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous Hamoli Olika R2 for Manly. Red Triumph for the Bulldogs. Luminous Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Bang Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Mawaki Fodawaika for Titans. League Heads Tom Starling for the Raiders. Luminous Ali Brigginshaw for the Broncos. Game Breakers Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. Luminous Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Die cuts, Dallin, Routine, Zalesniak for the Warriors. Luminous, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Die cuts, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Luminous, Reed Marnie for the Cowboys. Bang, Kale Iro for the Sharks. Luminous, Damien Cook for Dragons. League heads, Marky Mark for the Roosters. Luminous, Adam Dewey for Tigers. Game breakers, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous, Dominic Young for the Knights. League heads, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous, Casey McLean for Panthers. Game breakers, Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous, Chans Nicole Klokstad for the Warriors. League heads, Dylan Lucas for Knights. Luminous, Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. Bang, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous, Ethan Sanders for the Raiders. Red Triumph, Dylan Walker for the Eels. Luminous, William Kennedy for the Sharks. League heads, Milwaukee Fotowaka for the Titans. Luminous, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Tommy Dearden for Cowboys. Luminous, Sean Russell for the Eels. League heads, Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Luminous, Zali Hopkins for the Dragons. Gladiators, Teddy for the Roosters, number 237. Luminous, Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. League heads, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous, Ben Trebojevic for Manly. Game breakers, Mahalia Murphy for the Eels. Luminous Sanua Taruva for Tigers. Bang. Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous Will Penasini for the Eels. Bang. Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. League Heads, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Jermaine McEwen for the Knights. Game Breakers, Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Luminous, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Die cut, Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous, Max Plath for the Dolphins. League Heads, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Jonah Pezzett for the Storm. Mercury, Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Number 20. Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. Game Breakers, Alifiana Khan-Piera for Titans. Luminous, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Die cuts, Asaya Yo for Panthers. Luminous, Saratoga Tuki for Tigers. League Heads, Jermaine Isaaco for Dolphins. Luminous, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous, Regan Campbell Gillard for Titans. Dally M. Luminous, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. League Heads, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous, Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Bang, Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Luminous, Tom Starling for the Raiders. And last packet for box number 8. Game breakers, Kuli Kefu for Dolphins. Luminous Tamika Upton for the Broncos. Box number 9. Die cuts, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous, Reece Walsh for Broncos. League heads, Liam Martin for Panthers. Luminous, Tolotokawala for Manly. Red Triumph for Manly. Luminous, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. League heads, Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Luminous, Payne Huss for the Broncos. Game breakers, Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. Luminous, Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Bang, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. League heads, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Die cuts, Dylan Luke Walker for the Eels. Luminous, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. League heads, Max King for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Bang, Tolotokawala for Manly. There's no number. Luminous, Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Bang, Lockie Garvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Ethan Bullimore for Manly. Gladiators, AJ Brimson for the Titans, number 249. Luminous Samuel Stone Street for the Sharks. Game Breakers Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. Mercury Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs, number 388. Luminous Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. League heads Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Bang Fanua Pole for Tigers. Luminous Max King for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous Billy Smith for Roosters. League heads Connolly for the Dolphins. Martian Albert Jones, Luminous for the Warriors. League heads Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Luminous Dream Buller for the Tigers. Game Breakers Milwaukee Fodawaika for the Titans. Luminous Xavier Coates for Storm. League heads Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Die-cut Bronson Sherry for the Bulldogs. Luminous Dylan Egan for the Dragons. Game Breakers Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Luminous Abby Church for the Eels. League heads Junior Paulo for the Eels. Ben Hunt Luminous for the Broncos. Game Breakers Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Sayongi for the Eels. Die cuts Teague Wilton for the Sharks. Luminous Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. League heads Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Luminous Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Bang Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous Jerome Luai for Tigers. League heads Jerome Luai for Tigers. Luminous Hudson Young for the Raiders. Clive Churchill. Luminous Leka Halasima for the Warriors. Game Breakers Lachlan Ilias for the Dragons. Luminous Hammer for the Dolphins. League heads Sam Walker for the Roosters. Luminous Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. Bang Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Luminous Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Game Breakers Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Luminous Dylan Brown for the Knights. And last packet for the box. Red Triumph James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Oh. League heads Renato Mulatalo for the Sharks. Luminous Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Gladiators Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Number 109. Luminous Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Game breakers, Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Luminous Dream Buller for the Tigers. Bang Tamale for the Raiders. Luminous Xavier Coates for Storm. League heads, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Ben Trebojevic, die cuts for Manly. Luminous Dylan Egan for the Dragons. Game breakers, Tamale for the Raiders. Luminous Abby Church for the Eels. Red Triumph, Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. Luminous Spencer Linu for the Roosters. Game breakers, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Luminous Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Die cuts, Murtagh Nakor for the Warriors. Luminous Jamie Chapman for the Titans. League heads, Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Bang Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous Dylan Brown for the Knights. Bang Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. A red Triumph for the Sharks. Luminous Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Game breakers, Julia Robinson for the Broncos. Luminous Ethan Bullimore for Manly. Oh. League heads, Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Luminous Jesse Colquhoun for the Sharks. Bang Sanua Taruva for Tigers. Luminous Kurt Catewell for the Warriors. League heads, Alifiana Campi era for Titans. Luminous Jerome Luai for Tigers. Game Breakers, Big Tino for the Titans. Hudson Young, Luminous for the Raiders. Bang Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous Aleka Halasima for the Warriors. League Heads, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Hammer for the Dolphins. Game Breakers, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. Mercury, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Number 413. Nico Hines, Luminous for Sharks. League Heads, Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous Lehel Pawate for Manly. Dylan Lucas Bang for the Knights. Luminous Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Game Breakers, Abby Church for the Eels. Luminous Dean Mariner for the Broncos. League Heads, Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Luminous Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. Die Cuts, Sanua Taruva for Tigers. Luminous Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. League Heads, Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers, Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Luminous Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Daly M. Luminous Apposite Coruscant for the Tigers. League Heads, Max King for the Bulldogs. Luminous Liam Martin for Panthers. Game Breakers, Dane Gagai for the Knights. Luminous Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Die cuts Max Platt for the Dolphins. Luminous Ben Hunt for Broncos. Alright, last packet for the box. League heads Gahamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Luminous Asaya Yongi for the Eels. Alright. League heads a hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Game breakers Kira Dib for the Cowboys. Georgia Hale Luminous for the Titans. League heads Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Josh Kerr for the Dragons. Game breakers Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous Ruben Garrick for Manly. Gladiators Xavier Coates for Storm. Number 507. No, these are a group break. So all these cards are already assigned to somebody. Someone has each team. There's a team list in the description, but regardless, no, we won't be listing these exact cards on the website, but make sure you go and check the site to see what is available. There is still plenty there. I know there was some updated not long ago. Die cuts Brendan Smith for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Zach Labert for the Cowboys. Red Triumph for the Tigers. Luminous Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Game breakers Jesse Colhoun for the Sharks. No worries, always happy to answer. Luke Brooks Luminous for Manly. Bang Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Asokatoa for Dolphins. League heads Murray Talagi for Cowboys. Luminous Anfanua Blake for Sharks. Game breakers Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Die-cuts Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. I don't know if we've got anything in the Mercuries or the Gladiators left to list or open. I think they're all done. League heads Alex Twal for the Tigers. Luminous Jalen DeGroot for Titans. Bang Nathan Cleary for Panthers, which sucks a bit, sorry, but yeah. Corey Horsburgh, Luminous for the Raiders. This is the last of our 26 League Heroes breaks. Roughly around number 60. I think it's actually 58, if I'm being honest. I think 211 was our first one. Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. That's a lot of packs. League heads Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Luminous Billy Walters for the Broncos. Bang Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Luminous Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Golden Triumph. League heads Sam Verrills for the Titans. Luminous Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Game Breakers Jareem Bula for the Tigers. Luminous Cassie Hiku for the Eels. League heads Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous Marky Mark for the Roosters. Mercury Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Number 206. Luminous Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Die cut Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Luminous Wade Egan for the Warriors. Not singles and not recent releases. Sometimes we'll get some recent cards from a large collection of older cards. But when we buy collections, it's normally of older stuff and not singles or just a few cards. We buy large collections. League heads Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Luminous Latu Finu for the Tigers. Game Breakers Harry Grant for Storm. Luminous Greg Marshue for the Knights. League heads, Murtagh Nakor for the Warriors. Luminous, Kefu for the Dolphins. Red Triumph, Katoni Stags for Broncos. Luminous, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. League heads, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Appy Nichols for the Warriors. Game Breakers, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Broncos, you're going to be tough because everyone's looking for them. Dolphins, maybe a bit easier. I would search various Facebook groups and eBay. Yeah, that's where I would be trying. Ezra Mam, Luminous for the Broncos. League heads, Stefano Utakamanu for Storm. Luminous, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Bang, Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Dominic Young for the Knights. You too, buddy. Good luck in your chase. Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Die cuts, Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Luminous, Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Luminous, Carl Lawton for Cowboys. Bang, Marky Mark for the Roosters. Luminous, Fanua Pole for Tigers. Game Breakers, Nafor White for the Roosters. Luminous, Angelina for the Bulldogs. And last packet for the box. Bang, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. And Zach Lomax for the Eels. G'day Warren, welcome buddy. Alright, last box. Let's get it done. Game Breakers, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Luminous, Nafor White for the Roosters. League heads Jackson Purdue for Cowboys. Luminous Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Bang Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Game Breakers Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. League heads Dylan Walker for the Eels. Luminous Xavier Willison for the Broncos. League heads Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Luminous Billy Smith for Roosters. League heads Brighton Nakora for the Sharks. Luminous Tommy Turbo for Manly. Die cut Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Luminous Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Bang Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Luminous Roger Tulvasa Sheck for the Warriors. League heads Sam Walker for the Roosters. Luminous Tiana Penatoni Gray for the Sharks. Mercury Alex 12 for the Tigers. Number 15. Max King Luminous for the Bulldogs. League heads Cody Nikorima for the Dolphins. Luminous Lachlan Albert Jones for the Warriors. Game Breakers Tegan Dimmick for the Bulldogs. Luminous Jack Williams for the Eels. Triumph Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous Terrell May for the Tigers. Die cut Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous Stefano Utkamanu for Storm. League heads Reece Walsh for the Broncos. Luminous KO Weeks for the Raiders. Game breakers John Bateman for the Cowboys. Luminous Bo Fermor for Titans. Bang Lycan King Togia for the Dragons. Luminous Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Game breakers Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous Reece Walsh for Broncos. League heads Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Luminous Todd Koala for Manly. Die cuts Matthew Tomoko for Raiders. Luminous Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Gladiators Sam Walker for the Roosters. Number 167. Luminous Alex 12 for Tigers. League heads Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous Tyron Wishart for the Storm. Die cut Jesse Rumian for the Sharks. Kira Dibb Luminous for the Cowboys. Game breakers Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Bang Joash for the Eels. Luminous Sam Verrills for the Titans. League heads Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous Bradman Best for the Knights. League heads Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous Payne Huss for the Broncos. Bang Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. Luminous Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Game breakers, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Triumph, Christian for the Dragons. Luminous, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. 4 to go. Die cuts, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Junior Paulo for the Eels. League heads, Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Luminous, Felice Kafusi for Dolphins. Xavier Coates for the Dolphins. Storm even. Luminous, Ethan Strange for the Raiders. And last one. Game breakers, Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous, Lachlan Ilias for Dragons. Alright, going back to the beginning. Premiership Predictor, number 44. Reigning champs for the Broncos. I've seen a post saying they can still do it. They're not out yet. I would assume they would have to win every game. Dally M Predictor, number 188. Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. Alright, instant win. Don't think we've seen too many for this team. Titans. Dally M number 25. Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Clive Churchill, number 106 for the Dragons. Dally M Predictor, number 74. This player definitely can't win it, but there is a substitute. This one is Ryan Pappenhausen. I can't remember who the substitute is, guys. I know Select has it on their website. Alright, Gold Triumph, number 32 for the Broncos. Not sure how well that will show up in the corner there. Alright guys, well that is the end of part 1, which was the retail case. I'm going to go have a quick break, a coffee, toilet run, and maybe a quick bite to eat, and we'll be back with part 2, our retail starters case. Thanks for joining us.